The city of Neenah, Wisconsin is located along the west shore of Lake Winnebago, about 30-minute drive south of Green Bay, which is the city where I live. Neenah is part of a long string of urban and suburban areas known as the Fox Cities, which also includes Appleton, Menasha, and Oshkosh. Together, the Fox Cities are regularly mentioned in national publications, listing the most family-friendly places to live. It's also a place where most people are Green Bay Packers fanatics. And to football fans, it's a region that is affectionately known as the Frozen Tundra.
In 1983, Neenah was similarly a quiet place perfect for raising a family. And Starkey Swenson was someone who had done just that. At 67 years old, Starkey Swenson lived on Lake Winnebago with his wife Lois, to whom he had been married for 44 years. The Swensons had 4 adult daughters, 3 of whom had moved out of Neenah. By his late 60s, Swenson was doing well in life, with financial stability after a successful career in sales and marketing with local papermakers Kimberly-Clark and Central Paper. Following his retirement from the paper industry, Swenson became a sales associate with Raleigh Winters Realtors, a franchise of Century 21. His boss in 1983 described him as an exemplary employee, leading the company in commercial real estate sales, keeping voluminous records, and leading an ordered life. At 67 years old, Swenson was described by those who knew him as looking younger than his age, with a deep tan, a fit physique at 5 foot 10 inches and 155 pounds, and long sideburns.
Swenson's life in Neenah included community service, dances at social clubs, and quality time with his family. At their house on Lake Winnebago, Swenson could be seen swimming daily during the warm summer months, and he and Lois were regular attendees at parties at the Menasha Club, a local gathering place for folks from the middle and upper class. Swenson's social circle was large and included people he worked with as a member of both the Neenah Plan and Parks and Recreation Commissions, on which he served for 14 years. As chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission, Swenson helped Neenah purchase 2 new parks. Swenson also served on Neenah's United Way, on the church council for St. Paul's Lutheran Church, and he did charity work for the city's Bergstrom Art Museum. If you would have mentioned Starkey Swenson to people in Neenah in 1983, those who knew him would have said that he was kind, generous, and conscientious. Heading into the late summer of 1983, Starkey Swenson appeared to have it made. He had a mix of professional success, leisure, and an active social life.
That all changed sometime after 8:30 p.m. on August 13th, 1983. During the day, Starkey and Lois had gone on a family picnic to Elkhart Lake, a picturesque Wisconsin village with a namesake lake famous for its blue-green water. At some point during the outing, Starkey and Lois end up having an argument, which we know from a report provided by the Swensons' daughter. Elkhart Lake is about an hour's drive from Neenah, and they returned home around 8 p.m. By 8:30, Starkey had hopped on his rust-red bicycle with a basket on the front and pedaled away from home. He's wearing a light blue and tan striped short-sleeve shirt, white slacks, and white deck shoes. Starkey Swenson was never seen again.
According to his wife Lois, Starkey would often go out in the evening on his bicycle, but he'd always be home before 10:30 p.m. So when he did return home on the night of August 13, his family started to worry. On Monday, August 15 at 12:30 p.m., the Swensons' daughter Jan, who lived in Milwaukee, reported her father missing to the Neenah police. She said that she believed her father had left on his bicycle to visit a friend on Congress Street, only a few blocks from the Swensons' home. Police were dispatched to question Starkey's friend, only to find that he hadn't seen Swenson on the night of August 13. The city of Neenah assigned 2 detectives full-time to the case, Lieutenant Eugene Bricko and Detective Ronald Doro. Bricko and Doro interview and re-interview everyone they can find that could potentially be connected to Swenson's disappearance. They also keep an eye on Swenson's bank account and credit cards, including one from Hertz Rent-A-Car. A month after Swenson's disappearance, he hadn't withdrawn any money or used any credit. Bricco and Doro admitted to the Appleton Post-Crescent newspaper that they were baffled and that their investigation had gone nowhere. As the detectives put it, 29 days into their investigation, and they hadn't had a single promising lead. It seemed that as fast as the investigation started, it seemed to run into a dead end. To his friends and family, the disappearance of Starkey Swenson was totally out of character. His wife and daughters couldn't believe that he would leave for days without notifying them of his whereabouts.
So at this point, we're a month in since anyone has last seen Starkey Swenson. We've got a well-known, well-liked member of the community who has seemingly vanished into thin air and no major leads to investigate.
Yeah, that's right. There was a single report that Swenson had been spotted in Chicago, but that lead didn't go anywhere. A salesman from Neenah who had seen news coverage of Starkey Swenson's disappearance contacted the police in the late summer of 1983, saying he saw somebody he thought looked like Swenson board a Republic Airlines flight at O'Hare International Airport, but his name wasn't on any of the flight registers. Plus, Starkey hadn't accessed any funds to pay for a ticket. According to his family, Swenson wasn't the type to have much money on him. They estimated he had $50 at most, and he didn't have his checkbook when he left on his bike. Probably the O'Hare sighting was simply the case of the Neenah salesman noticing somebody who looked semi-similar to Swenson.
Yeah, I could see how that could be the case. So with the exception of our possible sighting in Chicago, 1 month after Starkey Swenson goes missing, the police are essentially out of leads.
And that all changes on September 11, 1983, when Carl Staffold, a janitor at Shattuck Junior High in Neenah, contacts the police with information that he thinks might be connected to the case.
Like almost everyone else in Neenah, Staffold was aware of Swenson's disappearance, and he knew that he had last been seen riding his red bike. Around the time Swenson disappeared, Staffold had found red bicycle parts in a grassy alcove on the side of the school. He reports this to the police. He also lets them know that, unfortunately, he was unaware of a possible connection to the case at the time the parts were discovered, and he threw them in a dumpster. When the detectives get to Shattuck Junior High, he shows them a 71-foot-long gouge in the pavement, which is continuous with a 94-foot-long mark in the grass, both ending in a broken tree. To the detectives, it looks like these could have been caused by something being dragged by a car along the ground. So, they end up removing pieces of the curb and the blacktop, and they send it to the crime lab in Madison for analysis.
Now, we've got to remember this is 1983. DNA technology hadn't been developed anywhere near what we have today. The point of removing the blacktop and curb was to look for evidence of blood and paint and metal that might have been left behind from Swenson's bike, if it was dragged. But the crime lab found no evidence of blood, and even though there was a red streak on the parking lot, it wasn't consistent with bike paint. So evidence-wise, at least initially, the finds are somewhat unclear and don't, at least at the time, seem to help the police with the case moving forward.
There was another interesting development around the same time that Staffold contacted the police about the bike parts he found. Lois Swenson applies on September 21, 1983 to a Winnebago County court, and she asks it to help settle Starkey's estate.
Yeah, this seemed pretty interesting to me too. Swenson hasn't been declared legally dead yet, which typically happens sometime around 6 to 7 years after someone's gone missing. In this case, Lois Swenson wasn't looking to have Starkey declared legally dead. She was just looking to have a receiver declared to take charge of his business, financial, and legal affairs. I think it seems most interesting because it occurred less than 2 months from the date that Starkey disappears.
I don't know all the possible reasons someone would do this, but it certainly seems like Lois no longer believes Starkey has any chance of returning home. Not exactly a vote of confidence that he's alive at this point, despite only minimal progress made in the police investigation. This is probably something we'll need to investigate further as we work our way through this case, in hopes of identifying who might have some information on possible locations of the body. So not too much happens between September 21, the date Lois Swenson applies for the court to settle Starkey's estate, and late October 1983. A little over a month goes by, and then, quite suddenly, something interesting happens. The police execute a search warrant on John C. Andrews, another local resident, and they take his car, a 1973 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, into impound at the crime lab. So Dr. Karsten, this seemingly comes out of nowhere, or at least it's a surprise to everyone outside of the police force. Andrew's name hasn't really come up publicly at all in this case. What do we know about him and about his potential involvement?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard absolutely nothing, at least in the press, about Andrews at this point. We can only assume that a tip or a witness statement gives police enough cause that he's involved that they're able to obtain a search warrant. What we do know about Andrews is he's a pretty interesting guy, especially for somebody living in Neenah, Wisconsin in 1983. John C. Andrews is a 44-year-old British national who works as an airline inspector for KC Aviation, which is a company that specializes in maintaining corporate aircraft. He's apparently quite well off financially. He drives a Pontiac sports car. He's also known for traveling around the world. Andrews is divorced from his wife, Claire Andrews, who he met just 2 years before while he was traveling in India. The two were married in mid-July 1982, but Claire filed for divorce just 6 weeks into that marriage.
Now, at this point in the case, we don't really know much about why the police are interested in John Andrews, what evidence they have against him, what others have told them, or what they're looking for with their warrant. We know they've got convincing enough information to get a judge to sign that warrant, and we know they've taken his car. So tying this to a few other bits of information, they impound John Andrews' car, and we also know that Carl Staffold, the Shattuck Junior High janitor, showed the police possible bike and or vehicle gouges in the pavement at the school. It's possible this has something to do with their interest in Andrews Firebird. Another interesting fact is that Claire Andrews, John's ex-wife, lives directly across the street from the school where the bike parts and gouges were found. But despite all this, nothing really comes about as a result of the warrant executed on John C. Andrews' vehicle. At least not publicly. We really don't hear much more about it. In fact, we don't really hear much of anything at all in this case until 1984,